Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I rise on this occasion to move the bill entitled Immigration Amendment Bill 2021. This is a bill intended to amend the Immigration Act, Chapter 6.02, Mr. Speaker, and it bears the short title, Immigration Amendment Act 2021. This bill, Mr. Speaker, introduces a new type of resident visa to be classified under the caption as digital residency, and which will become available to certain categories of visitors to St. Kitts and Nevis, as outlined in the bill. Specifically, the digital resident visa offers qualified individuals and their close family members or dependents the opportunity to live and work in St. Kitts and Nevis for up to 12 months. Mr. Speaker, this is one of the new developments that had come in the wake of COVID-19, as a number of countries sought innovative ways to bring back some element of tourism to their respective destination and to get more persons to come and visit in the wake of the pandemic. Barbados was the first country in our region to introduce this type of visa under the umbrella of the welcome stamp back in July 2020 to boost its visitor arrivals, which had fallen as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. According to published data from the Barbados government sources, to date, the welcome stamp has attracted residents from over 100 countries, with the top 5 countries seeking entry under the program coming from the United States of America, the United Kingdom, Canada, Nigeria, etc. As at the 31st of August 2021, Barbados had received 2,953 applications and 1,987 had been approved. From fees alone, Barbados collected just over $4 million. This, of course, excludes revenues from such things as the rental of apartments, transportation and food of those who would come in under the welcome stamp. Mr. Speaker, there are at least 9 countries in the broader Caribbean that have introduced similar programs, that is, some form of temporary residency program, in the last 2 years. Anguilla, Antigua and Barbuda, Aruba, Bahamas, Turks and Caicos Islands, Bermuda, Cayman Islands, Curacao, Dominica, and Montserrat. Although their residency programs results are not well outlined and published, as for example, those relating to the Barbados welcome stamp, all of these countries have communicated that their programs have achieved some measure of success. Here in St. Kitts and Nevis, we have so far focused on controlling the pandemic and ensuring that there continues to be low community spread of the pandemic. We are indeed happy that we now have the 3rd wave under control, and we have within the sub-region the highest recovery rate from the COVID-19 pandemic. We see over time that the number of infections have moved from alarmingly high to encouraging low, and at times we are reporting 0. With our COVID-19 vaccination rates among the highest in the region, we can now safely open our borders, as we did this morning when we removed some 3 of the restrictions that hitherto had prevailed. It is considered timely for St. Kitts and Nevis now to safely offer the digital residency visa with an appropriate amendment to the Immigration Act. So the Immigration Act basically had provided for movement in the country and for persons to reside. It had not contemplated the resident that we are now appealing to, and we will get into those categories that we are appealing to. And in fact, they are outlined in Clause 3 of the bill, where we would amend Section 2 to provide specifically for the digital resident. And the digital resident includes digital nomads, who are remote workers who travel to different locations on a regular basis, and they basically use the modern technology to work from their hotels, co-working spaces, coffee shops, libraries, etc. The freelancers who are self-employed or working for a company as an independent contractor and who can travel while they work or work from home while living in one place on a long-term basis. Consultants who are professional consultants that work remotely. Retired persons who are persons retired and who have sufficient funds to support themselves during the 12-month stay in St. Christopher and Nevis. We have the digital workers or tech startups who are workers in the technology industry, who are working from home, including but not limited to content specialists, software developers, graphic designers, innovators, etc., etc., Mr. Speaker. These would represent a new category of persons that we are inviting to come in country. They can stay, they can work. They are not, as it were, coming here to work in a local company or company resident here, but they are taking their work from abroad, as it were, and doing it here. For that, they will pay a fee. So it's not the usual work permit authorization that will be provided to them. And that is why we need to amend the legislation to cater for this new category of visitors. Importantly, we bear in mind that this is not the normal tourist. This is someone who will come and spend up to 12 months in the country, and so will form part of our long-term pool of persons who come into the country, spend money here, develop important relationships, and help boost the economic growth within the country. Mr. Speaker, if we were to go to the 8th schedule, part 8 of the amendment bill, we say that a digital resident may employ a person who is a citizen of St. Kitts and Nevis, or an approved CARICOM citizen, or a citizen of a protocol member state residing here, to work as a domestic worker or support staff. Again, we are encouraging families to come to spend time here, and they may want to have support. The support could be from somebody taking care of their apartments, taking care of their children, or in any other capacity assisting them, and they would be allowed to do so under this program. Again, this will boost employment opportunities. In fact, the more persons come and the more who are engaged in long-term stay here, it means that they will need support at some point in time, whether it is security or otherwise, and we have provided for that. event to take place. Under the said Schedule Part 8, an applicant for digital residence shall make the application online while the person is outside of St. Christopher and Nevis, except that this provision shall not apply in respect of an application for renewal of a digital residence or any other case, as the Minister may by order direct. This provision is akin to what prevails with respect to the regular work permit. Strict application of it. The application should be made while the person is overseas, not an island. An island should only occur when the person is already there, so you are renewing it. So we brought that over for some degree of symmetry in the treatment of the application. He said there shall be paid in respect of an application for digital residence such fee as may be prescribed, and the fee we are contemplating will be one much higher than the normal work permit, and in fact this one will be quoted in US currency. So again, that reflect the quality of person we are attempting to bring into the country, not someone who will end up being a charge, not someone who cannot take care of their own business responsibilities, but somebody with the means to be able to contribute. And then Section 3 says any person being a digital resident who contravenes or fails to comply with any condition subject to which the permit was granted commits an offense. And where the digital resident commits an offense, the Minister may at any time modify or cancel any conditions specified in or revoke the digital residence. Of course, the digital residency visa program will be administered by the Ministry of National Security and Immigration, because that's where it properly falls. Entry into the country is a national security and immigration issue, but it will be a program which will have collaboration across ministries. So, for example, we would anticipate that our embassies and missions and consulate abroad will actively promote this particular program and will provide support to it, liaising with the Ministry of National Security. We expect that the Ministry of Tourism will also promote that, because in a sense we are looking at long stays. Though the tourism typically focuses on the short stay visitor, persons coming in for a week, this would add another important offerings to our residency here. Of course, we have a CBI program. Some of our citizens abroad may also wish to come back, although this will not strictly apply to them, but their friends and others they can invite to come to be part of the residency. St. Kitts and Nevis offers 2 islands, 1 paradise, that is generally a peaceful environment and that is ideal to live and work. Indeed, over the last 4 or 5 years, we have achieved a remarkable sense of quiet within the country relative to the years gone by. On Tuesday, the Commissioner of Police presented to the Cabinet, as he does on a weekly basis, the crime situation in the country, and he reported very confidently that the crime statistics continue their downward trend. And so we are happy for that. And we reflect upon where we was, for example, before 2015, where we were in 2011 with 36 homicides. We have now changed the trajectory and that to a number of significant interventions in the country that have brought the peace dividend. It is something, of course, we have to continue to work upon, but the peace dividend for the country obviously brings dividends to all sectors of socio-economic life of the country. The Federation can boast a stable governance structure, a flourishing real estate market, high-speed broadband connectivity with the rollout of fiber to home, and we have, I think, one of the strongest grounding within the currency union in terms of our development of fiber optic technology, broadband connectivity. St. Kitts stands supreme, top of the class, and therefore our capacity and capability with respect to broadband connectivity, the rollout of fiber to homes, etc., should be an important attraction for those who want to come and to work and to have reliable services here as they perform their duties. We are going to, of course, ensure that in our build-out, and the Minister of Technology is here, that we are going to ensure more development, enhanced development of conference room facilities, computer certification labs, training and innovation hubs to improve our standing in the area of ICT. Is it important that perhaps maybe 3 years ago, at an international global conference on technology, we stood out as one of the smallest countries who had made the greatest strides in technology development. And we, in fact, was the only country to have been awarded 2 prizes for our achievement in the field of ICT. As I said before, this then will be a multi-sectoral approach. We will build upon all the synergies that we can to ensure that this work. Strategic partnerships, of course, will be established with a number of large companies, Microsoft, Facebook, and other such companies. And we will want to, of course, encourage them to have some of their people to come here to work from home. The Ministry of National Security will collaborate with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs through the St. Kitts and Nevis embassies and consulates located around the world to promote our digital residency program to targeted corporations, companies, and individuals. And the primary markets we have outlined as part of our look ahead strategy in relation to this. 7 areas of the world which we would want to focus on: the United Kingdom, the United States of America, Canada. These are some of our traditional markets with respect to tourism. The Middle East, in particular, the United Arab Emirates, the Europe, India, and Africa. Mr. Speaker, digital residents, of course, have outlined them as enumerated in the law. It's a broad category of persons, and we believe that with sustained and targeted marketing, persons in all of the mentioned categories could be invited to come to St. Kitts and Nevis. What are some of the benefits we can expect? And in my presentation so far, I have deduced some of the benefits that would flow from such a program. We, of course, are looking for revenues, and the revenues will come basically from getting successful applications or applicants, Mr. Speaker. In the first year of the program, the government is expected to earn just over $1 million US for individuals and $750,000 US for families. The family is expected to pay $2,500 US, and an individual will pay $1,050 US. So we are projecting, if all goes well, that we will have close to $5 million being raised to this particular exercise. It is contemplated that a non-refundable administration fee will be imposed. The projected earnings, I'm advised by the PS of National Security, are quite conservative, but they are based on research of what has obtained elsewhere and also based on how we intend to strategically position St. Kitts and Nevis with respect to the rest of the competition. Clearly, the country is involved with it. They are diverse: Turks and Caicos, Cayman Islands, Barbados, Anguilla, etc. And just as we have had to carve out a niche for ourselves with respect to tourism, in a similar way, we will be doing this. The Digital Residency Visa Program provides an alternative option with more long-stay visitors that provide for foreign exchange and could advance our economic development program. With a rigorous screening process for financial fitness and security checks for proper due diligence and the requirement for applicants to have health insurance, successful applicants then are less likely to become a burden on the state or to represent a reputational risk. A long-term plan must be developed for attracting quality digital nomads and tech startups and high network individuals to advance the forward thrust of our country. We expect that some of these, when they come and fall in love with our country, will invest in local businesses and will provide additional support for them. Of course, we can see them as we see, for example, the students here who are part of an educational tourism component and who could be classified in some way as being a good example of a long stay visitor in our country, spending substantial period of time here, doing everything from our gyms, our restaurants, and sometimes we marvel with some of these American and external restaurants and other facilities. Had it not been for these long-stay visitors, would they be self-sustaining? So there is tremendous potential here for economic activity, and of course we are going to position ourselves in a way that would allow St. Kitts and Nevis to be at the cutting edge of this emerging a new market. Mr. Speaker, the bill is a relatively short one, and as was reported earlier, it simply seeks to introduce an amendment to the existing immigration bill to provide for a particular and perhaps peculiar category of persons who may wish to come in our country, spend a reasonable long period of time, conduct work, or do other things that are permissible under the legislation and for which they are prepared to pay a special price. As I said, these persons are not persons coming to look jobs. These are persons in the main who are already working, but given the technology and given our ability to compete in this area, our trust, for example, in the cable and so on, we can expect that we will be able to move forward with respect to this. So, Mr. Speaker, that is as much as I would wish to say at this particular point in time. While this is something novel for us, it has, again, from my introductory remarks, it has worked in several countries across the Caribbean space. And so we have been able to put our heads together, learn from their experiences, and we are ready now to roll out our own digital residency program. May it please you, Mr. Speaker. I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Dr. Timothy Harris, Member for St. Christopher 7. I recognize the Honourable Attorney General to make his presentation.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And I rise to second the motion and the reading of this bill. It's a very exciting bill that has been moved by the Honourable Prime Minister, member for number 7. And he has, as usual, done an excellent job of letting the House know that St. Kitts and Nevis is in business, is open to attract, to invite, and have a new exciting category of visitor come and stay with us, enjoy the benefit of a small island, quaint, beautiful place, but also to live and work. It brings, as the mover of the bill has said, to us the opportunity for us to have opportunities for citizens to gain work. It adds a different category of tourists, if you want to call them that, long-stay visitor, who helps our economy grow, and it's an exciting new form. The digital residency bill. I won't necessarily go through it as the Honourable Mover has, but just to add that one or two things to his presentation, Mr. Speaker. Speaker, I like the term digital nomad. It is innovative. People who want to find new, peaceful, beautiful places to spend their time away from the cold, from the bustle. And I dare say some of the areas where they come from, people are a bit more fearful of the existence of this pandemic that we have. We here in St. Kitts and Nevis has done an excellent job in managing the response to COVID, and it is one of the areas that we can use to attract people to know that they can come to live and work in St. Kitts, an environment where they can be safe. Freelancers is a digital resident we want to attract, who are self-employed or working for a company as an independent contractor, and who can travel while they work or work from home while living in one place on a long-term basis. People who are professional consultants who can work remotely. They don't have to be physically with a client to do work. And so you can come and work any time of the night or day, go to the beach, go up into the hills, relax in our environment. And so we think that we have a beautiful environment to attract these individuals to come to our shores. A category that we also want to encourage to come and spend time on our islands are retired persons who are retired but who have sufficient funds to support themselves during their 12-month stay in St. Kitts and Nevis. So they can come here for 12 months, they're retired, but they have enough funds. And I'll talk to that a little later. Digital workers or tech startups. We in St. Kitts and Nevis, as the Honourable Mover of the bill has said, the Honourable Prime Minister, have shown that we have the fundamentals to attract the new technologies, our workers in new technologies to our shores. And tech startups, people no longer just have to go to Silicon Valley, but you can come here and work in Silicon Valley from here. And so we upload, we just don't download anymore from the internet. And people can stay here, work on their projects, and be comfortable because we have a proper network, a proper framework basis for working in the digital world. We are not limited to content specialists, software developers, graphic designers, innovators employed with large corporations. All of those can come and work because St. Kitts and Nevis have the infrastructure, whether it is to the cable, whether it is the cable and wireless. We have a fiber network laid around the island that's constantly being upgraded, and as we speak, high-speed internet can be had around the island of St. Kitts and Nevis shortly. As well as, we also will be making sure that we have fiber to the home, where people can have more reliable, even more reliable connectivity. This then, Mr. Speaker, is what this bill is about. A short bill, simple bill, but it's an innovative one that makes our product here in St. Kitts and Nevis, our tourism product, our livelihood, such much more attractive, and one which we can be justly proud of. I want to just clarify one or two little things that we might have seen. We also say one of the amendments we will do, we say, is that we want to, subject to the provisions of this Act and regulations made under this Act, a person may, on application made to the Minister, in the form set on the A schedule, be granted permission to become a digital resident of St. Christopher and Nevis if he or she satisfies the requirements specified in subsection 7 and the A schedule. And I go to the subsection 7, the person referred to in subsection 6 shall be a person who A, wishes to work remotely in St. Christopher and Nevis for a maximum period of 12 months, and sub 1, who is employed on a full-time basis in a country other than St. Christopher and Nevis, and 2, who is employed by a company registered and operating outside of St. Kitts and Nevis. It says B, is not a citizen, an approved CARICOM citizen or citizen of a protocol member state. And some of us want to know what does that mean. Basically, currently, we have a regime within CSME, within our arrangements within the CARICOM region, where our CARICOM citizens come here all the time, Guyana, Trinidad, Jamaica, and are afforded stay up to 6 months. And so protocol member states would be those in the OECS who have similar ease of entry and ease once you can satisfy questions of work permits and so on. This here is a separate category of resident coming from outside our region, and we look towards North America and Europe and other areas where we have people who, and as we say in the bill, are high net worth individuals, who is an individual that is seeking places for investment opportunities and would like to explore the islands and want to experience life in the islands for an extended period of a maximum of 12 months. So this then is what this bill does. Just one other thing I would want to say, Mr. Speaker, and that is that when these bills were circulated, they have since had some modifications, which have also been circulated to members locally, and we hope that when we come to committee stage, we will be able to incorporate those into the bill without more, except for one section in the A schedule, which will remove the question of fees that we think can be done by regulation. Other than that. Finally, I wanted to make the point, Mr. Speaker, that added to this very impressive bill that we have here is a digital residency application form. A form that we will have online, ease of applying, and that anybody, anywhere in the world, will be able to fill out this form. It's a comprehensive application form. And I would just want to point out, Mr. Speaker, that over the last year or so, we have shown how working together, collaborating with different agencies of our government, a sort of transformative economy is happening. And here we have been able to show that online we can apply to come to St. Kitts and Nevis. The SKNA travel form, in which we have Ministry of Health, Customs, Immigration and National Security. Any visitor, any national going and coming to St. Kitts must fill out this SKNA travel form that has worked seamlessly in allowing us to combat the pandemic and work. And here again we have collaboration with the IT to do this digital residency application form. It's a full form, and it does well in being able to screen those applicants to know that their bona fides, know of their bona fides, where they will stay, what is the employment, who are their dependents, what is their travel history, do they have what is their income, do they have insurance, as well as all of these things that are so critical to make sure that those we attract and bring here can help us and help to lift up our economy and our country and so on. And with those few words, Mr. Speaker, I wish this bill safe passage in this honourable House and to success in this new form of a digital residency that has been brought to the Parliament by the Honourable Prime Minister and his Ministry of National Security. Just to say quickly that I would want to commend the members of the Ministry of National Security, P.S. Petty and his team, who have worked to produce this important bill and have crafted it well to ensure that it protects all our citizens as we move forward. May it please you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, the Honourable Vincent Byron Jr., Attorney General.
Mr. Speaker,
I recognize the Honourable Jeffrey Hanley, member for St. Christopher 1.
thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. As I listen to the presentation by the Honourable Mover and Seconder, the opposition has no problem in supporting this bill because, as was highlighted, we recognize it provides the country with modern solution to the COVID-19 and working remotely, Mr. Speaker, while providing additional avenues for, of course, our tourism-related, injection into the economy. But, Mr. Speaker, please allow me to ask a few questions, and these are for clarification. As the mover rightly said, Barbados did this in 2020, so my first obvious question, Mr. Speaker, would be why so late? But of course the answer could be better late than never, because it has been a while that we were waiting for an appropriate response to the downturn in the economy and the tourism, that is, and no doubt, as were alluded by both presenters, this is one means of doing that. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, I am not certain if there were any consultations done as it relates to this bill, specifically probably with the Chamber of Commerce, probably homeowners, the private sector, etc., as we're trying to push forward this bill, because no doubt in some form or fashion some of these persons might be affected. Another question or clarification: while we prioritize housing for these digital residents in hotels or the local homeowners and landlords who have lost the additional income from the exit of some of these overseas students? Are we targeting those areas where persons who would have made the investments in, the apartments and they are now emptied? Are we going to be assisting in aiding persons in that direction? And another question, Mr. Speaker. Although the digital residents will be working remotely at home, they are in our local environment. So would any of our labor laws be applicable to them? I didn't hear that coming out from the mover or the seconder. And finally, Mr. Speaker, obligations and rights of employees such as provisional of safe working space no longer applies to this situation. But in the case of an unfortunate emergency, how does this stand out, Mr. Speaker, while these persons are working remotely? These are just some questions or some clarifications that came to mind while listening to the presentation. As I said when I started, the opposition has no problem in supporting this important bill. May it please you, Honourable Speaker.
Thank you, Member for St. Christopher 1, Dr. Jeffrey Hanley.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I rise to bring closure to this important debate on a very innovative area of engagement for our country. And clearly, we are moving in the right direction. And we heard that this morning from the Honourable Leader of the Opposition as he made his contribution on another bill. This one is no different, and I'm heartened that we have had the support of the Honourable Member for St. Christopher 1, and I want to thank him for being constructive in relation to this bill and indeed in all matters that would come to the Honourable House. I must thank the Honourable Attorney General for his input on the bill. This is an area which fascinates the age, you heard it from his voice. Matters to do with technology, the application, etc. That's his hobby now. And so he has been our First Minister, really responsible for technology and the build out of that. And so he continues to have a fondness there. More substantively, though, we are trying to carve out a competitive niche in a particular area, tourism, if you will, long stays in the country, largely to boost the economic development and the level of economic activities. We had in the past a very vibrant, I would call it, tourism education sector, with Windsor University, with Ross, with UMA Trust, and other such facilities, and another university in Nevis. And there was a committee that was established sometime in the past, and that committee did an evaluation of the impact of these long stays on the country relative to the traditional tourism sector. And the advice was these long stay visitors did more to our tourism, or more, let me rephrase, did more to our economy than the traditional tourism. Education, tourism in the Federation was being a principal contributor of economic growth. And you could see, because these are basically year-round visitors, spending long time here, renting and so on, and doing all the things that residents do in a country in a sustained way. So if we can truly reach the target which the Permanent Secretary, Mr. Petty, has set, we will certainly push the country further out of the COVID COVID-19 pandemic, that cloud which still hangs over the globe. And that is the most significant downside risk. It is true that it was the advent of the pandemic that gave birth to this kind of welcome stamp, long stay, digital residency, by whatever name. The rose is just as sweet. And clearly this strategy in relation to combating the COVID-19 pandemic has varied from country to country. And that in part answered the question appropriately put by the member for number 1. Why now? And he gave the answer, which is a good one he gave himself, better late than never. And we still believe that with all the benefit of coming quote-unquote late, we have learned well what had led to the successes of those other 14 or so countries, 9 actually, countries in the Caribbean that had gone before us. We have learned of the pitfalls, and we have seen where and how they have been able to achieve success. And we therefore can improve upon that as we seek the competitive edge. So the easy answer, better late than never, more substantively for me, is that we have always pursued a strategy of life first. That is why in 2020, we ended the year with the least number of cases in the entire hemisphere. In the entire hemisphere. In the record of management of COVID-19 for 2020, St. Kitts and Nevis had the best record, the life first strategy. Other countries that had fiscal pressures determined that yes, the life first strategy made sense, but that if they did not quickly open up, they were going to have persons dying from hunger. When we were able very early to outline a stimulus package, the most comprehensive and the largest on a per capita basis by any country in the hemisphere, no other country was able to do that. So we had sufficient buffer to be able, as it were, to wait, get better acquainted, prepare ourselves for the gradual and phased opening up of the country. Barbados, for example, which is on the IMF program, thank God, in around 2016, 2017, we paid out the IMF $117 million left behind from a $234 million debt. So we did not have that burden. Barbados' new government came to office with hamstrung by debt and therefore had to enter in an IMF program, and the COVID-19 came and created a nightmare, and therefore there was an urgency for them. When, for example, we had closed borders, other countries had their borders open. So if our borders were closed, we could not in fact be inviting people. And we will well remember the fight we had in 2020 to preserve life. In fact, it became a court matter, a matter which was eventually settled by the people of St. Kitts and Nevis when they came out on the 5th of June 2020 to settle the argument as to the leadership of the country going forward. So to me, the answer is that our life first strategy meant that for the period of 2020, we couldn't participate in that initiative because we were on a phased program. We were on preserving life. We were on developing the capacity of our health system to respond to COVID-19. Those were our priorities, and we did not wish at that particular moment to have strangers. Indeed, as part of the border closure, even some of our own citizens could not come home. So that is the answer to the timing of it. Last year, October, we said that we will begin the phase opening We have seen what that has done. We have been successful, however, in reacting to the wave of COVID-19, and we are now in a better position, we think, to welcome persons. In contrast, in 2000, when Barbados opened up and St. Lucia opened up, they quickly had this community spread. We, of all the countries in the sub-region, we were able to hold back on those kinds of development for the longest period of time. St. Lucia, for example, was one of those countries who could not delay the opening up of its borders, and in fact basically opened very early, had done reasonably well, but St. Lucia also had significant community spread as a result of its opening. And as we speak, I just went on the Central Bank website to see the number of confirmed cases. St. Lucia stands with 13,000 cases. Substantial number of them, of course, had come in 2020 as the government, under pressure, was forced to open up to get money to meet its bills, etc. And so this is where we are at. In fact, in 2020, St. Lucia had owed us some money, and we, the generosity of spirit, determined that we'll give them some time to pay, because they had approached us and it wasn't easy. Grenada, 5,897 cases. Dominica, 5,821 cases. St. Vincent and the Grenadines, 5,525 cases. Antigua and Barbuda, 4,141 cases. St. Kitts and Nevis, 2,786 cases. Small Anguilla, 1,386 cases, and Mount Strat at 44. So that is what the sub-region looked. And when you go behind the numbers to look at the strategy that had been pursued, you get some of the responses as to the timing of these things and how they impacted. So we think our strategy was the right one. Consultations with the private sector are always important. And the consultations, of course, now that we have a legal framework, this will provide the basis on which we are going to be engaging in a more significant way the private sector parties in this. Generally, the private sector has been supportive of any initiatives that would lead to more jobs, more income, more economic activity. We don't foresee any difficulty there. Indeed, coming out of the pandemic, we came up with the all-of-society approach, in which on almost every initiative in relation to the fight against the COVID-19 pandemic, we brought private sector, public sector, every entity of interest together to have an input in that. So consultations, we will continue, and these are ongoing. In fact, over the last year, we have held so many consultations, repeatedly with them, repeatedly with groups, with subgroups. For example, we met with the business people down at Port Sante. We met with them over at Royal St. Kitts Hotel, more popularized as a Jacta Hotel Conference Room. We met with the Chamber of Industry and Commerce and different groups over that particular period of time. We met with developers in the CBI program and all of these. So the consultations will continue. And then who basically will be some of the beneficiaries of the inflow? Will it just be the hoteliers? Will it just be the big Pearsons? Or other persons with their homes who want to make them available. Of course, it is a free market, and so the digital resident will make that determination in accordance with their preferences, their likes, etc. But in our legislation at Part B, the digital residence application form, we have catered for all types. So, type of accommodation under subsection B, hotel or resort, villa, private home. So anyone of these three the applicant can choose to go to, as now obtains. And then the labor laws, and this is an important question in the context of the COVID-19 pandemic, which brought to the fore the inadequacies of the Protection of Employment Act. And clearly it is something that we have to revisit. My understanding is that the Minister of Labour, as part of the tripartite arrangement, has put certain proposal or have sought to get consensus with respect to the way forward with the labour laws and what the COVID-19 has taught us, how we are going to respond to it for the protection and betterment of the labour force is a critical issue which has always dominated the attention of my government. Indeed, we see that when we had to, as it were, struggle with the inadequacy of the severance fund, which was unable to finance or to deal with the crisis that had been created by the COVID-19 pandemic, that had put over 5,000 persons out of work for a prolonged period of time. And at no time in the history of the country had the country had to deal with so many persons we put out of work. When in 2005, I think it was, we closed the sugar industry. The sugar industry had a mere 1,200 persons. The labor force had fallen from where it was in the 70s of about 5,000 plus, down to just about 1,200 or so, between 12 and 2,000. A majority of them had been persons from Guyana, Santo Domingo, who had come in over regular intervals to help us harvest the sugar industry. Some of them have stayed here, and that in part would have generated the new nucleus of persons of Spanish origin that are resident here. Every year, we were bringing in over 500 or close to 500 persons to harvest in the sugar industry. So the labor laws then, as a general statement, will apply. It will apply to those who come in. If they hire anyone, because they're in our jurisdiction, our labor laws would apply. I think I would have answered all of the questions raised, perhaps save one. The member said I've answered all, so thanks. But clearly then, this legislation on the face of it does no harm. And I am hopeful that in the application of it, no harm will come to anyone here in St. Kitts and Nevis. And that the benefits that I have outlined in my presentation of the bill, those benefits will come to our people. More jobs for our people, more niches in which our people can become involved, more opportunities for them to learn. So, for example, new skill sets, because these people, by and large, are ICT savvy persons in the main. So they will provide a nucleus of opportunity for our young people to become engaged and to play a support role and dominant role in particular areas. Mr. Speaker, with those words, I again want to commend the Immigration Amendment Bill 2021 to safe passage to the Honourable House, and to thank the members on this side of the House and on the opposition side for giving good support to this particular bill. I hope it will redound to the benefit of all our citizens and residents here. Finally, it is for me to acknowledge the work of the Permanent Secretary, Mr. Osborne Petty, and his team, You're seeing some members of the team here. Immigration Officer Jeffers, our Chief Immigration Officer, Mrs. Myrtlin Hughes, and Miss Blanchard. I want to thank them very much for coming and for the tremendous work they did. There were several presentation and iteration of this as they brought their thoughts to the cabinet, and we had to respond to them, require new information, updated information. I think all in all they did a very good job in getting it. This through the cabinet and now ready in time for a sitting of the Parliament so that we could really start the build out of this for it to impact us in 2022. May it please you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
Thank you, the Honourable Member for St. Christopher 7 and Minister of National Security, Dr. Timothy Harris. Honourable members, the question is that the bill entitled the Immigration Amendment Bill 2021 be read a second time. Those in favour? Those against? The ayes have it.
A bill to amend the Immigration Act, Cap 6.02, otherwise known as the Immigration Amendment Bill 2021.
The bill has been read a second time. House moves into committee stage. Yes, we are at committee stage. So
Clauses 1.
the question is that clause 1, sorry, let's back up.
Clauses 1 and 2.
The question is that clauses 1 and 2 stand part of the bill. Those in favour? Those against? The ayes have it.
Clause 3.
I guess we need to consider the amendments are relative to what clauses. I think we can do it like that.
Mr. Chairman, it is proposed to amend the Immigration Amendment Bill 2021, and the amendments are circulated to Clause 3 and subsequent clauses that they be adopted as they circulated, except in the 8th schedule to paragraph 2, sub 2, would be in place in regulations for the purposes of greater ease of amendment to the relevant application fees.
Thank you. The question is that that clause 3 and all other amendments as circulated, plus the amendment to schedule to the 8th schedule as described by the Honourable Attorney General be or stand part of the bill. Those in favour?
Aye.
Those against? The ayes have it. Do we go to the title now?
The enacting clause.
The question is that the enacting clause stands part of the bill. Those in favour?
Aye.
Those against? The ayes have it.
The title.
The question is that the title stands part of the bill. Those in favour?
Aye.
Those against? The ayes have it. House resumes.
Mr. Speaker, I rise with your leave to report that the Immigration Amendment Bill 2021 has gone through committee stages with a few amendments which have been circulated, including an amendment to Part A of the schedule. I now would request, Mr. Speaker, the application of SRO 57, Standing Order 57, to facilitate the third reading of the bill, and so that it can be passed.
The question is that clause.
Mr. Speaker, I do second the motion.
The question is that Standing Order 57 be suspended. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. With the suspension of Standing Clause 57, so that the bill could be read a third time in this one sitting, the question is that the bill be read a third time and pass. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it.
A bill to amend the Immigration Act, Cap 6.02, otherwise known as the Immigration Amendment Bill 2021.
The Immigration Amendment Bill 2021 has been read a third time and passed. Next item on the order paper. I recognize the Honourable Member for Nevis 9, Mr. Mark Bantley.
Mr. Speaker, good afternoon. I rise to move the second reading of the bill shortly entitled the Civil Aviation Amendment Number 2 Bill 2021, which had its first reading in this Honourable House on the 30th of September 2021, and to commence the debate, Mr. Speaker, on this particular bill. Mr. Speaker, today marks the second time that we are amending the Civil Aviation Act this year. The first amendment sought to align our legislation with the International Civil Aviation Organization, ICAO, Annex 17. The purpose of the proposed amendment before the Honourable House today is to provide for matters related to ICAO's Annex 9, Facilitation Standards and Recommended Practices, otherwise known in the industry as SARPs, S-A-R-P-S. The ICAO, Mr. Speaker, is well known and, as we know, is a specialized agency of the United Nations. It is mandated to promote the safe and orderly development of international civil aviation throughout the world. It sets standards and regulations necessary for aviation safety, security, efficiency, capacity, and environmental protection, amongst other priorities. As I believe our public is aware, and certainly the House is aware, Mr. Speaker, global commercial air traffic plummeted since the first quarter of 2020 as a direct result of the COVID-19 pandemic, which spread like wildfire to all parts of the globe. Countries, including St. Kitts and Nevis, rushed to close their borders and restricted air travel to minimize the risks. Indeed, as the Honourable Prime Minister would have just briefly alluded to a short while ago, Mr. Speaker, our borders in fact were not reopened partially until October, I think it was, of last year. The ICAO has been proactive, and it has seized the opportunity to roll out a slew of training programs to assist states in enhancing their safety and security procedures. In Annex 9, it provides guidance specifically regarding facilitation of landed side formalities for the clearance of aircraft and passengers, goods, and mail. It offers a frame of reference for planners and managers of international airport operations, including government inspection agencies, airport authorities, and airline operators. It describes the responsibilities of both industry and government agencies. It also specifies procedures for carrying out clearance operations with a twin objective, Mr. Speaker, of effective compliance with national laws and the productivity of operators, airport staff, and government inspection agencies. Mr. Speaker, allow me now, as I make these, what I promise to be very brief remarks, to provide some background, which brings us to this point today when we are looking at, hopefully, the passage of the Civil Aviation Amendment Number 2 Bill 2021. During the period of 6 to 26 October 2020, the ICAO would have conducted an evaluation of the Eastern Caribbean Civil Aviation Authority, better known to us as ECA, and its member states. Subsequently, Mr. Speaker, the ICAO developed a program for aviation volunteers to strengthen the ECA and to improve safety and security oversight systems of the Eastern Caribbean contracting states. During the course of this process, and I think this is quite noteworthy, the ICAO selected St. Kitts and Nevis as the pilot or model state for the rest of the OECS for its facilitation program since, and this is important, Mr. Speaker, the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis was the only state within the OECS which already had a draft national facilitation program and airport facilitation program. ICAO would have reviewed these documents together with our relevant legislation to determine whether they were aligned to the objectives of Annex 9. ICAO concluded that there was need to bolster the legislative framework and has proposed a model for the amendment of the Civil Aviation Act, Cap 8.03. This bill today, Mr. Speaker, seeks to proceed on the ICAO model. And so we had a review. ICAO would have looked at St. Kitts and Nevis and decided that they would start with us as the model. Why? Because we were ahead of the other OECS member states, the other members of ECA, in that we already had a facilitation program. We had a draft national facilitation program and we had an airport facilitation program. Since none of the other member states had that, Mr. Speaker, St. Kitts and Nevis was decided, or selected, I should say, by ICAO as the model, the pilot to proceed. Having looked at our legislative framework, ICAO has now said to us that we need to strengthen it, and that is why we're here today. Under the Chicago Convention, to which we have been a state party since 2002, states are obligated to adopt standards and expedite the necessary formalities in order to minimize operational delays. As the means of carrying out this mandate, the program is designed to help states achieve maximum efficiency in their border clearance operations and at the same time, Mr. Speaker, achieve and maintain high quality security and effective law enforcement. Annex 9 facilitation is based on 10 articles of the Convention, which require that the civil aviation community complies with laws governing the inspection of aircraft, cargo, and passengers by authorities concerned with customs, immigration, agriculture, and public health. Indeed, the phrase facilitation of formalities appears as a subtitle for Article 22 of the Convention on International Civil Aviation. Article 22 obliges states to, and I quote, adopt all practicable measures through the issuance of special regulations or otherwise to facilitate and expedite navigation by aircraft between the territories of contracting states and to prevent, Mr. Speaker, unnecessary delays to aircraft, crews, passengers, and cargo, especially in the administration of the laws relating to immigration, quarantine, customs, and clearance. End of quote. Facilitation also includes the continuous improvement of control processes and service procedures. It requires a high degree of cooperation among the different sectors of the community: airline operators, service providers, airport authorities, inspection agencies, each of which has a responsibility to contribute to such improvements. Essentially, Mr. Speaker, ICAO expects, and our international obligations require of us, that various agencies here cooperate with each other: customs, immigration, inspection, agriculture, as the case may be. As the Federation now anticipates, Mr. Speaker, an increase in flights, passengers and cargo through our airports for the month of December, and we hope continuing into the new year, this is therefore a most opportune time to enhance our legislative framework to ensure that we are at an internationally acceptable level, creating greater efficiency of service without compromising security. For this reason, Mr. Speaker, we have come today for this bill, shortly entitled the Civil Aviation Amendment Number 2 Bill 2021, which is quite short. In fact, Mr. Speaker, it comprises a mere 6 paragraphs covering just 2 pages. And it is technical in nature. I don't think it is controversial. I don't think it ought to create undue prolixity in this debate. And it is my hope that we can dispense with this in very short order. If I can move just very quickly, therefore, Mr. Speaker, to the bill itself. The bill itself, substantively, at Section 3 thereof, speaks to an amendment of Section 4 of the Principal Act. And what I would like to emphasize there is that it replaces paragraph G, that is it renumbers paragraph 1, forgive me, and replaces paragraph G as follows. G now will read: cooperate with officers of the government on all matters relating to customs, immigration, aviation, security, defense, facilitation, or any other matters as appropriate. It also inserts a new subsection 2 as follows: the minister is the designated authority and is the overall coordinator of the National Air Transport Facilitation Program. If we were to move over page, to look at page 2, we realize that we have made a minor amendment to Section 10. The Act is amended in Section 10, subsection 3, by replacing paragraph A as follows: in the interest of national security, safety, and facilitation. The substantive amendments have come to Part 5 of the Principal Act. The Principal Act in Part 5 is amended, Mr. Speaker, by replacing the title with the following new title for Part 5. Part 5 will now read Security and Facilitation. And we have inserted a new Section 23, which reads as follows: this part also applies to facilitation, which means a combination of measures and human and material resources intended to improve and optimize aircraft, crew, passenger, cargo, baggage, mail, and stores flows through airports while ensuring compliance with relevant international and national legislation. There's also a new Section 24A, which reads as follows under the new heading Facilitation Programs. For the proper administration of facilitation matters relating to civil aviation, the following classified facilitation programs shall be applied: A, the National Air Transport Facilitation Program; B, the Robert Llewellyn Bratcher International Airport Facilitation Program; and C, the Vance Amri International Airport Facilitation Program. Now, why that is relevant? It is relevant because, of course, our country has 2 airports. The airport here, our main airport, international airport, the RLB, Robert Llewellyn Bratcher Airport, and of course a Nevis, a smaller airport, the Vance Amri International Airport. It is important for all the people of the Federation, those in St. Kitts and those in Nevis, to recognize that the Ministry of Aviation has oversight of both airports. It has oversight, Mr. Speaker, for safety and security and efficiency at both airports. And therefore, this legislation applies across the Federation. It is national in scope, and it seeks to incorporate and to make it clear that it will have a national air transport facilitation program and also a facilitation program at RLB and a facilitation program at the Van Samuel Airport in Nevis. The other amendment, we are amending Section 50 of the Principal Act, replacing subsection 2, paragraph M as follows: concerning safety, security, and facilitation for the purpose of safeguarding civil aviation operations against acts of unlawful interference, where such operations are connected to the safety and security of passengers, crew, ground personnel, and the general public, including the use and operation of any item and equipment likely to be hazardous to aviation safety. And the final provision, Mr. Speaker, I did promise to be brief, is that we are inserting a new paragraph immediately after paragraph Z or Z in subsection 2 as follows. It is a new paragraph AA, prescribing the matters in respect of establishment of the National Civil Aviation Security Program, National Air Transport Facilitation Program, National Air Transport Security and Facilitation Committees, and the Airport Security Facilitation Committee. In short, Mr. Speaker, this really is legislation which has come about because we continue to improve our Aviation Act. Improve in terms of safety and security, that's why we were here earlier this year, but also improve in terms of optimal use to ensure that people are safe on the aircraft, people are safe at our aerodromes, but people are also facilitated in terms of their access to and egress from, not just people, but cargo, mail, as the case may be. And that is why, again, we require the cooperation of the various agencies of government, Mr. Speaker, to ensure that we offer international quality aviation at our airports in St. Kitts and in Nevis. I emphasize that this legislation comes about because of a review done by ICAO, and I applaud, Mr. Speaker, the Permanent Secretary, Ms. K. Bass, and of course those who lead our efforts in aviation here, Mr. Royston Griffin in particular, who I always single out because he is so good that other OECS countries have from time to time sought to borrow him so he can train them. And I think when any national of St. Kitts and Nevis gets to a level where they are being called upon by other countries to provide training to their people, we ought to recognize them and applaud them. And to the entire team, small team, but very effective team in aviation, I would want to applaud them. Small team doing great things, Mr. Speaker, because I think that when we consider across the landscape of the OECS that the ICAO would have selected St. Kitts and Nevis as the model, saying that we were already ahead of the other OECS countries in regard to this aspect of facilitation, I believe that that speaks volumes to the quality of work that is being done here at the Ministry of Aviation. And so I will not add much more except, Mr. Speaker, to crave the support of my colleagues and of the Honourable House and hope that the Civil Aviation Amendment number 2 Bill 2021 will have safe passage through this Honourable House. May it please you.
Thank you, Member for Nevis 9, Honourable Mark Brantley, and Minister of Aviation. I recognize Minister Wendy Phipps with her contribution.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In following truly to the fashion set by the mover of the bill, I too expect to be brief, but in so doing, I move to support the second reading of the bill and to offer a few remarks in the process. Now, from where I sit, the Honourable Mover of the bill has done an excellent job putting in context the reason why we are here in Parliament for the second time in 2021 to amend the Civil Aviation Act. He would have taken great pains to indicate why we were here in March of this year, in terms of dealing with matters such as the avoidance of interference, etc., and to add greater qualification to the Act of 2004 that would have addressed in quite significant detail over its 284 pages what would be the provisions that would be put in place and subscribed to and improved over time relative to aviation safety and security. And now, based on why we are here, to add to the mix aviation facilitation. Now, the history of aviation legislation in St. Kitts and Nevis even predates 2004, because some of our earlier iterations of regulations and legislation would have gone back to the 1950s, etc., when we would have been operating as a colony of Britain. However, over time, we have improved upon the legislative and regulatory infrastructure for civil aviation, and hence, I think, in support of what the mover of the bill says, it is the reason, in large measure, why ICAO would have chosen St. Kitts and Nevis to be part of this pilot program. I'm grateful for the time taken by the mover of the bill to put in context the work of ICAO and also the UN's Chicago Convention that basically sets in motion what ICAO should be about and should be subscribed to by all 193 member states covered under that UN umbrella. But essentially, Mr. Speaker, and I don't want to wax long, we are here basically to bring clearer definitions to the following: the appropriate authority for aviation security and facilitation, now as the replacement for the term of the minister, to also bring greater definition to the Civil Aviation Division, and at the same time to introduce for the first time in the literature of the legislation on aviation the term facilitation. And it is so important that basically for persons who have not even looked at the bill, you can safely take it for granted based on what the mover has said and what I am now repeating, that everywhere in the legislation being proposed, where applicable, where other definitions are already in, put in either prior to March of 2021 or thereafter, what we are asking for is that it becomes unequivocally clear that we want to include and ingrain and weave through the legislation the importance of facilitation. And it is for that reason why the mover of the bill would have taken time to discuss amendments in terms of 4A of the section of the Act, the further explanation of the functions, powers, and responsibilities of the minister, to replace where necessary the term appropriate authority for aviation and security and facilitation, and to clarify the authority which the minister, as the said authority, can delegate to the Director General for Civil Aviation. And of course, he would have made adequate mention of the role of Mr. Griffin, and the comments that he would have subscribed to relative to him, I would wish to ditto those as well because of the work of that gentleman. The legislation under review also seeks to better define the parameters for the functions of the minister in terms of, by comparison to the parent legislation, and it shows you how far and how long we have come. For example, in the parent legislation of 2004, it simply refers to the fact that the minister is to promote civil aviation by such means as the minister considers appropriate, and that is as vague as you could have gotten. But of course now, over time, we have spelt out all of these parameters in numeric order and in fashion that makes sense based on our current global realities when it comes to the aviation industry. We are also seeking in this piece of amended legislation to expand and to clarify the powers of the aviation security inspectors as per section 27A, also stated by the mover of the bill. And of course, this original section would have been inserted for the first time in March of 2021. And from where I sit, I think it is the most extensive amendment in the current bill under review at this moment. As I noted earlier, we are taking into consideration that we are looking at putting facilitation measures and procedures in place that were first iterated in March, And we are adding on some 12 areas wherein the inspectors are empowered to function in the interest of maximizing safety, security, and facilitation in the sub-regional aviation industry. Because while this bill is the basis of a pilot project, what I'm hoping will come out of it is that it then becomes the basis of some omnibus legislation which will be duly applied across the signatory member nations coming under ECHA. Now, Mr. Speaker, essentially ECHA, since its formation in 2003-2004, has had considerable success in terms of the civil aviation industry of the OECS. This is highly commendable in terms of its track record since the formation of ECHA, given that we have had very few air transport disasters, loss of lives, etc. And we have been able to contain these to a minimum. And it is a proud accomplishment for the sub-region, which we would like to maintain and which we are obligated to maintain at the same time, realizing, of course, that whatever we are doing, we will be bolstering by the international air navigation provisions and as well as the safety, security, and facilitation standards enshrined in the said UN Chicago Convention that would have been responsible for the formation of ICAO back in 1944 and then ratified by 1947. Bearing that in mind, Mr. Speaker, and as I promised I would be brief, I have no difficulty in rendering the fullest support to the amendments being sought in this sitting, and as such, I wish the bill safe passage. May it please you.
Thank you, Madam Senator and Minister of International Trade, et al., Wendy Phillips. Any further contributions to this bill?
Mr. President.
Recognize the honorable move of the bill.
Mr. Speaker, I'm so happy at the overwhelming support that is being given. Every member of the House on this side and on the other side is supportive. I want to thank the Honorable Senator for her contribution. She did promise to be brief, and she was brief, and I think that there's some value in brevity. And so, Mr. Speaker, I rise just to bring to a close the debate on this uncontroversial bill that is shortly entitled the Civil Aviation Amendment Number 2 Bill 2021. As I said, it had its first reading in this Honourable House on the 30th of September 2021, and I therefore move that it be read a second time.
Could I have a second?
I move to second the motion.
Thank you. The question is that the bill entitled the Civil Aviation Amendment Number 2 Bill 2021 be read a second time. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it.
A bill to amend the Civil Aviation Act, Cap 8.03, otherwise known as the Civil Aviation Amendment Number 2 Bill 2021.
The bill has been read a second time. House moves to committee stage.
Clauses 1 through 9.
The question is that clauses 1 through 9 stand a part of the bill. Those in favor? Those against? So the question is that the the clauses 1 through 9 stand part of the bill. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it.
The enacting clause.
The question is that the enacting clause stands part of the bill. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it.
The title.
The question is that the title stands part of the bill. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. House resumes.
Mr. Speaker, I rise again to report that the bill shortly entitled Civil Aviation Amendment Number 2 Bill 2021 has passed through committee stage without amendment. I therefore now move that the bill be read a third time and passed.
Honourable members, the question is that the bill entitled Civil Aviation Amendment Number 2 Bill 2021 be read a third time and passed. Those in favour? Those against? The ayes have it.
A bill to amend the Civil Aviation Act, Cap 8.03, otherwise known as the Civil Aviation Amendment Number 2 Bill 2021.
The bill entitled the Civil Aviation Amendment Number 2 Bill 2021 has been read a third time and passed into law.
Motions, resolutions.
I recognize the Honourable Minister of Finance and Member for St. Christopher 7 to present a resolution.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Every year around this time, we go through this routine of basically bringing a resolution from the Ministry of Finance. What is the purpose of the resolution? The purpose of the resolution is to achieve compliance with the Financial Administration Act, Chapter 20.13, for authorizing the government to borrow for current requirements in the form of advances for treasury bills. This repeats itself every year and will continue of necessity because the legislative authority to borrow, to hold treasury bills, and to engage in short-term borrowing only suffice for a 12-month period. So every year, so long as there are treasury bills and the government has substantial treasury bills, we have to come back to the Parliament. No new monies, but we have to come back to the Parliament to have the legislative cover. And we are pleased to have been able to do this every year since 2015 in keeping with our good governance mandate. I want to read into the record the resolution. It says the resolution of the National Assembly of St. Christopher and Nevis made under Section 49 of the Finance Administration Act, Chapter 20.13, authorizing the government to borrow for current requirements in the form of advances for treasury bills. And in the main it reads, whereas it is provided by Section 49 of the Finance Administration Act, Chapter 20.13, that the Minister of Finance may, in a financial year, and when authorized by a resolution of the National Assembly, borrow money from a bank, any other financial institution, or any other entity by means of advances of an amount not exceeding in the aggregate the sum specified in the resolution for the purpose of meeting current requirements. And whereas it is further provided by Section 49 of the Act that a resolution made under that section shall have effect for a period not exceeding 12 months. And this is the critical point. Each year you have validity, you have authority in terms of the short-term borrowing for a period not exceeding 12 months. So every year you have to go back through the routine of seeking again the parliamentary support. And whereas it is further provided in Section 49 of the Act that the power to borrow under that section may be exercised by a means of a fluctuating overdraft, treasury bills, or other similar means. And whereas it is provided by Section 56 of the said Act that there shall be charged upon the consolidated fund all the charges for which the government is liable. And whereas the Minister of Finance considers it necessary to borrow by means of advances in the form of treasury bills, some not exceeding $300 million for the purpose of meeting current requirements. Now be it resolved, therefore, that the National Assembly of St. Christopher Nevis does hereby authorize the Minister of Finance to borrow by means of advances in the form of treasury bills, some not exceeding $300 million for the purpose of meeting current requirements approved by the National Assembly this day in December 2021. So it's self-explanatory. It is a routine measure. It is in keeping with the best traditions of our good governance agenda that we should come and have legislative support with respect to current requirements of any borrowing, such as, in this case, treasury bills. What it then gives, as I said earlier, is protection, is a legal authority to hold treasury bills. And the government does have, and has from a time immemorial, held a substantial amount of treasury bills. Many businesses and residents see these as forms of investment and which they obtain a reasonable interest rate. For our own fiscal management purposes, we have always carved out enough monies to ensure that at any point, any request for treasury bills can be made. Nonetheless, as I said before, to the extent there is a consistent demand by our residents, our citizens, to hold these forms of security, the government come today, as we did last year, to seek the legislative authority in accordance with the Finance Administration Act. It does nothing to our debt because it's not adding anything new. It is basically providing the legal framework or upholding the legal framework by which these instruments can be sustained. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, I will second the motion. In rising to second the motion, I want to agree with every word spoken by the mover of the resolution, the Honourable Member for St. Christopher 7. And Mr. Speaker, so as to shorten this, because I don't think there's anything controversial about it, I won't bother to read the 5 recitals here, but permit me to read the prayer. Now be it resolved, therefore, that the National Assembly of St. Christopher Nevis does hereby authorize the Minister of Finance to borrow by means of advances in the form of treasury bills, sums not exceeding $300 million for the purpose of meeting current requirements. I do second the motion, Mr. Speaker.
Contributions are allowed for resolutions. Are there any further contributions? I'll therefore put the question. The question is that the resolution as circulated and presented by the Minister of Finance and Prime Minister be approved by this National Assembly. Those in favour? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it. The resolution is approved.
Adjournment.
Mr. Speaker, as has become customary, I rise and seek leave to move an adjournment sine die, and permit me, just for 1 minute or two, to express on my own behalf of the constituents of constituency number 8, and I trust on behalf of some of my colleagues, if not all, and I believe all, and I mean parliamentary colleagues. Congratulations to the Honourable Prime Minister on his 20th anniversary just yesterday. I happen, Mr. Speaker, and I think I saw you there, to have been invited to join in the luncheon celebrating this anniversary. And I must tell you, it was a sumptuous luncheon. I congratulated the Prime Minister on being able to provide such sumptuous luncheons. I think it was too much food for so little people, where we could get 3 and 4 times. But it shows how much he values the 28 years that he has put in to serve this country in his capacity as a member of the Parliament. And during those times, he has served in various capacities in government, if not all, and certainly now as Prime Minister. And the last 6-7 years as Prime Minister has shown that his experience in Parliament has done well to help shape the pathway of this government as we go through, especially through this period of COVID. I want to congratulate him again, his constituents, for continuing to return him, and trust that we will live to see many more serving in the Parliament. At least another 3-4 years as Prime Minister at least, and then of course continue to serve in an advisory capacity in the Parliament and elsewhere. Congratulations on being 28 years in the Parliament, Mr. Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I rise on this, the adjournment of the Parliament, to make some very brief remarks. Firstly, Mr. Speaker, I join with my colleague from constituency number 8 in extending congratulations to the Prime Minister on his attainment of some 28 years as the parliamentary representative for constituency number 7. The record, Mr. Speaker, would show that throughout the history of St. Kitts and Nevis, that he has the distinction of being the longest serving member in Parliament who has served as a Minister of Government. I do believe, Mr. Speaker, that speaks not just to his political skills, Mr. Speaker, but also to the fact that not just those who sent him to Parliament, but colleagues within Parliament, different administrations would have placed confidence in him to afford him the opportunity to serve as a Minister of Government, and now, of course, elevated to the position of Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, on behalf of my own constituents, I also extend congratulations to him for the service that he has given and continues to give to the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis. Certainly part of the success of the Team Unity administration can be credited to the years of experience that he has had as a member of Parliament and as a member working within 2 different administrations. However, Mr. Speaker, as I continue, I also take the opportunity to congratulate other members of this Parliament, not necessarily for years of service, but I think as the year is approaching the end, and of course there's a budget debate which will provide further opportunity for this. But as said by someone else in different words earlier. Sometimes it's better late than never, but I don't want to wait until it's too late. In that respect, I say congratulations to the Honorable Member for St. Christopher number 2 for bringing the ICC on the 19 cricket games here to St. Kitts and Nevis during the month of January. It is under his ministry and his leadership that we successfully hosted the Caribbean Premier League just a few months ago, and that would have given us the confidence and perhaps also given ICC the confidence in choosing the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis as a venue for these upcoming games. You heard much to the during the debate about COVID-19 and our own successful management of COVID-19. A number of different persons and stakeholders, in my view, are quite responsible for that. Two of those persons sit here on the government side. They are the co-chairs of the council, Senator Wendy Phipps, who is not an elected member of parliament, and the AG, who is also not an elected member of parliament. I highlight the fact they are not elected members of parliament because it shows that it is not just persons who are elected by constituents have valuable service, expertise, etc., that we can call up on to bring the necessary resources to bear in coming up with creative solutions to issues that we face here in the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis. Of course, our own Minister of Health, the Honorable Akila Byron Nisbet, is new to this particular ministry, but I think we can all agree that thus far she has been doing a tremendous job in leading the Ministry of Health throughout this critical period within our history. When the history of the Federation is written, Mr. Speaker, these are persons whose names will be recorded as making a significant contribution to the successes that we have had with COVID-19, especially as we make the comparisons with others around us. The cruise season, Mr. Speaker, has reopened here in the Federation. Though he's not present, I must commend also the Honorable Member for St. Christopher 4 for the job that he and his team continues to do in bringing cruise visitors back to the Federation in a safe manner. It has not been an easy task. We have sat in several meetings with different stakeholders discussing the concerns that they have. Taxi drivers, hoteliers, and some of the other stakeholders, the restaurant owners, etc. Because for over a year now, their livelihoods have been affected. However, we're seeing a rebounding of the economy, especially as it pertains to tourism. And even just this morning in speaking to one hotelier, he said that he is satisfied and seeing definite signs in terms of an improvement. The entertainers, Mr. Speaker, have bemoaned the fact that their businesses have also been affected They have asked a number of different questions as to when they can see a reopening of that sector. Just recently, just a few days ago, the Honorable Minister for Entertainment would have spoken to that. And so during the month of December, we expect to see a phased approach in terms of the reopening of the entertainment sector. We were told this morning that vaccinated persons will be catered for. And so while we are celebrating 50 years of Carnival, and I take the opportunity to wish the Carnival Committee and the Honourable Member the very best in terms of those particular celebrations, we are hoping that those who are involved in entertainment likewise will be able to say that though they have been affected, that the government, through its careful and well-planned approach, has ensured that they too are able to benefit from the reopening of the economy. Mr. Speaker, I've been a member of Parliament since the year 2004, approximately 17 years now. Compared to the Honourable Prime Minister, relatively short. Compared to the members for number 1, number 2, number 3, some may say that my service has been long. The point I want to make though, Mr. Speaker, is that over the years, I continue to learn and to be shaped by different perspectives coming from different persons. Different perspectives coming from my constituents, perspectives coming from the general public, perspectives coming from attending meetings overseas, hearing from other ministers, reading, etc. They all help to shape me in terms of being a politician. Whether a good politician or a bad politician, that is ultimately left for others to be the judge of that. Pardon? Only my constituents. Well, you see, they don't represent the majority if you look at it in terms of the total population. But, Mr. Speaker, the point I want to get to is this, that even in terms of being able to listen to opposition members, hearing their perspectives, etc., whether it is in here, during a debate, on the radio, reading what they would have written, engaging in them in one-on-one conversations, they too, they help to shape the perspective. And in terms of democracy, they make a valuable contribution because we need to hear from the different sides. In that respect, Mr. Speaker, I take the opportunity to congratulate Dr. Joe on his recent election as the leader of the St. Kitts Nevis Labour Party. I do hope that, like many other politicians, that he too would add his own share of meaningful debate to the political landscape here in St. Kitts and Nevis. And so on behalf of myself, again, I say congratulations to him. Finally, Mr. Speaker, on a different note, I extend condolences to the family of Elvira Williams of Sandy Point, who passed quite recently. Elvira was in her 80s. She has made her own contributions to the development of the community. She has produced several children. 12 children have been told by Senator Phipps, who also hails from the good and proud town of Sandy Point, and so she's familiar with the lady, having also been a former neighbor of hers. Amongst the children, you have Elvis Richardson, a former principal of the Virtuals High School. He taught me agriculture for some years when I attended the then Sandy Point High School. She had a son who may have been, I think, a sergeant in the police force, but who now resides in the Virgin Islands, and a son who was in the Coast Guard. If you look at some of the grandchildren, you have Shauna Herbert, one of the prison officers. You have Denver Herbert, a police officer. You have the Alicia, can't quite remember her last name, but she's a principal for the Charles E. Mills Secondary School. You have Barbara D, a well-known personality that not just in Newton Ground, but throughout St. Kitts and Nevis, who has a number of children who either served or currently serve in the Royal St. Christopher and in Nevis Police Force. She has, I think it's about 3 grandchildren who are well known within the religious community for playing drums and different instruments within churches, at concerts, etc. The point is, Mr. Speaker, that definitely she has made her contribution, whether individually or through her offsprings, to the development of this federation and certainly to the Sandy Point community. Therefore, as I said earlier, I extend condolences on behalf of my family, this honorable house, and the Sandy Point community to those who have been left to mourn her death. May it please you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honorable Senator Bernice Nesbitt.
Mr. Speaker, with your leave, I rise to join the honorable members for St. Christopher number 8 and 5 to congratulate the honorable member for St. Christopher number 7, the Prime Minister of the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis, and celebrating his 28 years of being a parliamentarian. It is a significant milestone in his political career, for it is not an easy feat to be accepted or received by the electorates time and time again. So it means that member for number 7 is doing something wonderful. So, Mr. Speaker, I just want to publicly congratulate the member for number 7 on this remarkable milestone in his political career. And in this same breath, I want to also wish him advance happy birthday greetings. So, happy birthday to you, Mr. Prime Minister, when it comes. May it please you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Member for St. Christopher 3, Kilobyron Nesbitt.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, just crave your indulgence for a bit. It would be remiss of me not to stand here today to pay tribute to the Prime Minister and representative for constituency number 7. I do so on behalf of the people of constituency number 3, but I also do so on a personal level, as he is the leader of my party, the People's Labour Party. He is a friend, and I want to thank him for his support and for his friendship and advice during this time. Mr. Speaker, I do believe that we can all say that everywhere we look within the Federation, we can see the impact of the Prime Minister's service to this country. We see it in infrastructure, we see it in homes, we see it in all the different sectors that he touched. We see it in more job opportunities, the way that he has been managing the finance of this country at this time in particular. And we can say that his leadership and economic stewardship and discipline, it have meant that we here in St. Kitts and Nevis can boast of a stronger economy and even better economy than even some of the larger, more developed countries and nations. Mr. Speaker, the hard work of the Prime Minister over these past 28 years and the things that he have done to help this country continues to get recognition, not only here in St. Kitts and Nevis, but we also see that recognition internationally as well, especially during these COVID times. As we know, he is the lead for health matters in CARICOM, and we have heard so much about how he has been admired and looked upon for the work that he has been doing here in St. Kitts and Nevis. And I could say, as Health Minister, I see firsthand his dedication to making sure our people are safe, but not only in St. Kitts and Nevis, but he also lends his advice regionally as well. And that is recognized not only here, but it's also recognized throughout the region. We've seen PAHO who have recognized his work. We see CAF and CARICOM who continue to recognize his work as well. And Mr. Speaker, I would dare say that his calm leadership during this time in particular, his way of putting people first, it shows how his experience is really in making sure that our country continues to grow stronger. But Mr. Speaker, we can't just talk about him on the national and international stage and not speak about his commitment to the people of Constituency 7, the people who he continuously say that he is humbled to be able to serve. We hear him say it over and over, that he doesn't know why, he doesn't understand the depth, but he is humbled and thankful for their continued support that have kept him here in Parliament for 28 years. And Mr. Speaker, we can also say that he's never forgotten the people of Constituency number 7, who has given him this opportunity to serve at this time. And through his stewardship, we here within the Parliament as representatives understand the importance that the people we represent and our community must never be forgotten, because we see that displayed continuously in the service of the Prime Minister. We see it in the programs that he has within his constituency, such as the Help a Child program. We see it in the way that he makes sure his constituents are taken care of, the new state-of-the-art community center. We see it in how he continuously gives to his community and the people within Constituency 7, making sure that they too are ensured of a stronger and safer future. And we cannot downplay that contribution that he has made to the people of Constituency number 7. Mr. Speaker, his 28 years of service also, we have to speak about his commitment to improving and uplifting women and young people. And I would dare say that there are persons within this humbled Parliament who can speak to his commitment to women and to young people. I, as a woman and a young person, was given that opportunity. He saw something in me and gave me that opportunity to be able to stand for elective politics. And that continues throughout, because if we look throughout government, we see that many of the senior positions are filled by women, and that was filled under his leadership. And then we speak about the new ministry that he would have spoken passionately about during the campaign, and which is now in fruition. And I have the distinct honor of being able to lead, which focuses again on young people, their creative space, their creative talents. His push to be able to develop young people through the creative arts, through this ministry, is more speaking to who he is as a person and his role in being able to elevate women and young people as a whole. And so, Mr. Speaker, our country is better because of his 28 years of service. Our people are better because of his 28 years of service. The people of number 7 are better because of his 28 years of service. And so we must congratulate him for the example that he has shown as a representative of the people, and we cannot let this 28 years go by without giving him the commendation that he deserves. So again, I want to take the opportunity to just commend him on these 28 years of service, and I look forward to continued working relations with him on a personal level, on a friendship level, at the ministerial level, at our party level. And for the continued advice that I receive, I want to tell him thank you as well for that advice, and thank you for all of the support that he continues to give, and thank you to your contribution to this country and the people of number 7 for the past 28 years. May it please you, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Jeffrey Hanley, member for St. Christopher 1.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And on adjournment, please allow me to use this opportunity to express congratulations to someone very dear to me. I refer to her as one of my baby sisters, Mrs. Kimon Archibald Lake, on the launch of her kiddies book, Irma Lou's Visit, which is available from today on Amazon for just $14.99. It's a book designed and created for preschoolers up to age 10, one that carries you through the magnificence that the St. Kitts and Nevis as a federation have to offer in our scenery and our culture. It is a book that is filled with poetry and rhymes. So I would hope that we get this book in our preschools and our primary school as a young entrepreneur, and also a very hard-working preschool teacher. I am so proud of her. In congratulating Mr. Speaker, I want to take this opportunity to congratulate our newly appointed leader of the St. Kitts Nevis Labour Party, the Honorable Dr. Terence Drew, on Sunday, as we held our historic conference, one that you have never seen in the Federation, Honorable Speaker. It was one that galvanized an energy that I can only imagine that will reap greater things going forward, Mr. Speaker. Also, I lend support and congratulations to Honorable Conwys Maynard, former MP, who would serve with me as Deputy Leader, Mr. Speaker. And of course, to the entire new executive of the St. Kitts Nevis Labour Party, I congratulate them. I also use this opportunity to thank all of my executive members, my branch, the delegates, who continue to be extremely supportive, Mr. Speaker. But, Mr. Speaker, I cannot sit before I express congratulations to a man from Sunday. I have tagged him Leader Emeritus, and that is the Right Honorable Dr. Denzel Douglas, who would have served for 32 years unmatched service, not only to the party, but also to the country and the region on a whole, Mr. Speaker. He remains with us in Parliament as our leader of opposition. And I would hope, Mr. Speaker, at the right time, this honorable House will find a way of being able to honor his legacy, putting petty politics behind us, Mr. Speaker. Again, I am pleased to have had the privilege of working closely with him since in 1989, Mr. Speaker. I would not go through all that he would have done because we all know and we are beneficiaries of that. But Mr. Speaker, in wrapping up, I want to congratulate the comrades who demonstrated their democratic rights on Sunday and use this opportunity to urge us to ensure that we live up to the theme that we had on Sunday, onward together. And as the party celebrates 90 years next year, the oldest party in the region, we will be celebrating, Mr. Speaker, to victory. May it please you, Honorable Speaker.
The Honorable Mark Brantley is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I long to go home, but I couldn't miss this opportunity to rise and to join my colleagues in extending congratulations to the Honorable Prime Minister and member for number 7 for 28 years in Parliament. His journey has been an interesting one because, of course, he was for many of those years in a different government. I don't speak to those years because I recall in those years I was on a different side and would have had different views during that time, which I shared publicly. But I can say that he is on the right side now, and he has performed creditably as our Prime Minister. And so I recognize him, 28 years at anything, and 28 years in elective politics. I have only myself just come, and I am already grey and tired. And so for those who have labored for so long, I think we ought to recognize and congratulate them. And so I join with my colleagues in extending the warmest congratulations to the Honourable Member for number 7 for his commitment to his constituency and for his longevity here. Let me also use the opportunity, because I like this feel-good moment. Everybody's congratulating everybody. I reflect that my good friend here and member for number 5, he forgot some members to congratulate. For one, he forgot 9, 10, and 11 when he was talking and congratulating everybody else. He also forgot himself. And number 8. I don't know why he would have forgotten number 8. But I believe that, Mr. Speaker, you forget, nobody say leave none for me. Mr. Speaker, I believe that, truth be told, this government has performed. It has performed creditably in very difficult circumstances. And I agree wholeheartedly with the member for number 5 in singling out members on this side for their Herculean efforts in this vineyard of governance, which isn't easy. We are a robust democracy here in St. Kitts and Nevis. And someone reminded me the other day that there was once on this earth a perfect man, a perfect human being sent here by God to serve us all. And he was rewarded with being sacrificed. He was crucified. And it therefore is a valuable lesson in that all of us, no matter how much good we seek to do, we will at some point face criticism sometimes justified, sometimes unjustified. But for my part, I would like to extend congratulations to all of the colleagues on this side who I feel have performed well, despite the difficulties and despite the difficulties that we've experienced, particularly this time during COVID. I'm also, since we're in this magnanimous state, to extend congratulations to the other side. I see the good member for number 1, he stood up, and I'm now told that he is the deputy leader. Yes. Deputy leader. Missed the leadership by a little bit, but he's now the deputy leader of the St. Kitts Nevis Labour Party. Let me congratulate them for their process. And to Dr. Drew, who isn't here, but to extend congratulations to him if he's listening. If he's listening, to say congratulations to him on assuming the leadership of this, the oldest party in the Federation. And let me also commend the party for the way it went about its process. Mr. Speaker, politics is sometimes by its nature divisive. And to see 3 young people step forward for leadership and for a party to have endured that, I think, speaks volumes to the party, but also, I think, to the strength of our democracy here in St. Kitts and Nevis. And so I'm quite pleased that we are seeing transition happening. Transition happened in Nevis in the CCM, transition has happened in Nevis in the NRP, transition has happened in the People's Action Movement, transition is now happening in the St. Kitts Nevis Labour Party. And so the country has a tradition, a rich tradition, of doing things in an open, transparent, and democratic fashion. And I think that has to be celebrated, regardless of where we stand politically. The country has a rich tradition of democracy, which has to be celebrated. Mr. Speaker, I would therefore join with the others in the commendations that have been issued. And I expect, through the grace of God, to be back here in another 2 weeks when we debate the budget, and certainly we'll have another opportunity then. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Brantley, and I recognize the Honourable Attorney General, Vincent Byron Jr.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I too would want to rise on the adjournment. I'm not often one to do that, but I think move today to also bring my congratulations to the Honourable Prime Minister and member for number 7. And just very briefly, to commend him for the 28 years that he has served as a politician, as a representative in this honorable house, representing the good people from Bellevue to Atlas in Constitution number 7, and also to the people of St. Kitts and Nevis. I first got to know Timothy Harris, as he was then, as a young student, at the Keon High School. And a very strange way. I had been a teacher at the Bassi High School, and their teacher in Keon High, their history teacher, had been sick for about a year and had traveled overseas, and they were coming up on their exams in the last term, somewhere in the early 80s. And I was asked to go and give some lessons to this class. So I would borrow my mother's car at the time and drive over to Kewan to teach. Huh? That's a different story. And I got to meet Timothy Harris and a number of other very intelligent young people. Timothy Harris then was very, very quiet, and we used to say it, very shy. I couldn't mash hands. And then he did well. at his exams, and the next year he came to the Barcy High where he entered sixth form, and he also did history. So he was a student of mine in sixth form as well, and I got to respect his intelligence and his character as a student. Again, very quiet, shy almost. And he has gone on to do exceptionally well. As a student, as an academic, he would have gone to the University of the West Indies and on to Trinidad from Barbados, I think, where he would have done well, accounts, and then would have won a scholarship to do postgrad in Canada, where he would have obtained a doctorate. Of course, during that period, he would have found time to still get elevated and selected to officer in St. Kitts and Nevis. My congratulations to him, apart from his long service, meritorious service to the people of Constitution of the Seven, really has to do, though, with the way in which the Honorable Prime Minister has been able to put together the very critical political arrangement here in St. Kitts and Nevis called Team Unity. He has been the fulcrum of the Team Unity movement dating back to late 2012, early 2013, and for some 2 years struggled and negotiated, and we went through all sorts of machinations involving the CCM in Nevis, the Honorable Mark Brantley, member for number 9, the Honorable Vance Amory, Ambassador Amory, the members for the People's Action Movement, the leader, PAM, the Honorable Member for number 5, Sean Richards, and the member for number 8. We all sat at the time on the opposition benches over there. And Timothy Harris and Sam Conda eventually had to leave the Labour Party in January of 2013. And for some 2 years, against great odds, the Team Unity movement was built. And enormous credit has to go to the sagacity of Prime Minister Harris, the manner in which he has been able to work with these disparate parties, so many disparate personalities, people who come from different backgrounds. It's different from having to work in a monolithic party where you are the leader of a party and can influence what happens. But where you have 3 different parties that are partners and having to navigate and to get consensus, it takes great courage, it takes great news and a certain wisdom to be able to do so. And I would want to congratulate Dr. Harris, Prime Minister Harris, member for number 7, on his 28 years, but to single out his achievement of being able to mold a Team Unity administration and to be able to manage us to perform at a very high level of governance in our country. We have done so for the first term with exceptional economic performance, surpluses every year. For those 5 years, double salary. Are we going to get a double salary this year? And see the CBI program that had been falling down, how we were able to resurrect it and strengthen it. I can say that while it is something that for years was started with the previous government, and that foundation building on what had happened in the 1980s with PAM did give us something to work with, but when we inherited it, it was in trouble. And there's no doubt about it, and it was in trouble. The US had introduced a FinCEN advisory, Canada had withdrawn their visa-free entry. We have done well. Yeah, I'm not trying to be contentious, but I'm just stating the fact seriously. But I do believe that the first term of Team Unity was highly successful, and it was done in an environment where three different parties who were not necessarily allied before had to be managed and cajoled and negotiated. And I think that Dr. Harris needs the highest commendation for that. And then came the elections, and again too, that would have seemed to be hotly contested, but the results show differently. Because I think the people of St. Kitts and Nevis, a lot of them I call the silent majority. They're not on Facebook, they're not on social media, they don't call into the radio stations. Quietly say, yes, you're doing a good job. Dr. Harris are praying for you. And those people, I think, have strengthened him and the Team Unity movement to bring this country to where we are today, having to do so in the midst of a pandemic in which many other countries have had a very difficult time. But we in St. Kitts and Nevis take a lot for granted. Take a lot for granted. We have had different periods of stimulus. We have had where people have been assisted in so many different ways. And we have been able to come out of this, what is a stronger, safer future, and be able to look forward to that under the leadership and guile of Dr. Timothy Harris. And so I want to commend him on his 28 years, but even more so for the manner in which he has brought all of the experience and experiences to guide us through the last few years in this Team Unity administration. And so I wish him well going forward. May it please you, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker,
Yes. Member for number
you allow me
6.
to make a few remarks, especially at a time when there is a lot of congratulatory statements that are being made. And so I speak for the entire team on this side to also add my quota of congratulations to the Prime Minister. Of course, the Prime Minister was recruited by me. I think you need to know that the facts must be put straight. And he was also fired by me. Let's also put that straight. So I, however, commend him for his longevity as a parliamentarian. But mainly, Mr. Speaker, I really want to commend and congratulate Dr. Hanley, the member for St. Christopher I, for on Sunday being elected, as we've heard, in what would be landmark type of election, having him elected to the position of the Deputy National Political Leader of the St. Kitts Nevis Labour Party. I also want to congratulate the former member of this Parliament, Congress Maynard, who also is the second deputy for our political organization. In fact, this election was taking place after there has been a full-scale restructuring of the St. Kitts Nevis Labour Party. where we now have 2 deputy political leaders, a new chair, and of course 3 vice chairs, part of the remodeling and rebranding of the party. So I want to commend both deputy political leaders, and of course to also congratulate the new leader who has emerged, Dr. Terence Joe, not yet in the parliament, but I'm sure will be in the parliament. And so I give warning to the member for number 8. Next year, he said? Number 8, I said. You better watch it. Sorry? Don't worry. When you heard what he said, he was cheating, didn't you hear? So, Mr. Speaker, I really want to use this opportunity also to thank the member for number 1 for the very kind words that he has issued today with regard to me. I understand I am now national political leader emeritus. And so I want to thank the party as well that I have served all these years for recognizing the service I have provided to the people, to the country, to the party. And I really say thanks for this recognition. May it please you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. The Honorable John L. Powell, member for St. Christopher II, is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I rise with pleasure on the adjournment, and I must say I'm a bit odd to be able to come after the political leader emeritus from the member for number 6. But I rise very briefly on 2 matters. Firstly, to lend my own congratulations to the member for number 7 on his 28th anniversary as an elected member in this parliament. As one of the newcomers, the newbies in parliament, and particularly in the cabinet, I think the fact that he has been there for 28 years and I'm there for a little over a year, we do think differently sometimes. But I must say that I think what I admire about him the most is sitting in cabinet with him and observing his reasoning, his appreciation for how a government operates and runs. From 28 years of experience in almost every portfolio, you see that experience coming out. And I believe that is why this Team Unity administration has been able to be as successful as it has been on behalf of the people of St. Kitts and Nevis, because it has been led by somebody with that type of leadership, that type of experience. He certainly is setting an example for leaders to come. And so I congratulate you, Prime Minister, member for number 7, my good friend, on 28 years of service to not just the people of constituency number 7, but service to the people of St. Kitts and Nevis, and dare say, the region. I also use this opportunity, Mr. Speaker, to remind persons that, remind the nation, remind the region that this coming Friday will be the opening of our National Carnival, the 50th edition of our National Carnival, Sugar Mass. And so I invite one and all to participate in all of the activities that will be taking place over the course of the next month, thereabout. We will be having in-person as well as virtual events. And I know that the Carnival Committee has been working extremely hard to ensure that it produces a well-deserved 50th Carnival for the people of St. Kitts and Nevis. Last year we were forced to do so with basically 100% virtual. Through the hard work and the strides made by not just the Carnival Committee, but by members of this government, through such as the task force, the COVID-19 task force, through the good consciences of those persons who have been able to vaccinate and have gone out to vaccinate. We're able to now welcome back patrons to these events. And so I ensure this Parliament and the people of St. Kitts and Nevis that we will have a fantastic Sugar Mass 50 that will be held in a very safe, healthy, and fun way. I want to, again, pay kudos to the members of the task force who have worked with the Carnival Committee in establishing the necessary protocols that will allow us to maybe not have a carnival that we've been accustomed to, but certainly to be able to have a carnival that we will enjoy, and a carnival that I think, on the back of last year, will be one that sets precedents for years to come. And so I invite one and all once again to join us as we celebrate 50 years of National Carnival here in St. Kitts and Nevis. May it please you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Minister Wendy Phipps, please.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I too, like the rest of my parliamentary colleagues, would like to rise on the adjournment to lend my voice of congratulations to the Honourable Prime Minister on the celebration of his 28 years as a parliamentarian. Unlike the Honourable Attorney General, I will not venture to say how long I have known the Prime Minister, but it was while I was a University of the Virgin Islands student. In an incident he and I will remember fondly and can laugh at now. We would have met through a mutual friend. But nevertheless, I congratulate him for his astute leadership, his ability to listen, his ability to manage a group of diverse persons who, for the first time in the history of our country, are coming together as a triumvirate in leading St. Kitts and Nevis, and especially at a difficult time like this with the unprecedented COVID-19 pandemic and the follow-on, the post-pandemic global picture being as uncertain and as unpredictable as it is, but nevertheless, he has been able to captain the ship of state in terms of putting us on an excellent footing so that we can be better poised to take advantage of the changes that will come in the global socio-economic and political landscape that is in front of us. So again, I congratulate him. I also wish to take this opportunity to thank the Honourable Sean Richards and the Minister for Number 2, John L. Powell, for the kind words relating to the work of the COVID-19 task force. I know that the Attorney General and I would have been singled out as co-chairs of the Mitigation Council, but the real work is being done by about 18 to 20 men and women from across the length and breadth of the Federation, representing various disciplines from finance to customs, the Ministry of Tourism, Ministry of Health, and so forth, national disaster, national emergency management, and etc. And every one of these individuals bring their own brand of expertise, their own peculiar way of looking at things, but nevertheless generally with an openness to new ideas. And at the fulcrum of their service has been a commitment to country. For 2 years, this committee has worked basically for thanks, sometimes for no thanks, because in trying to balance a country where we are trying to work our way out of the pandemic in a manner that is safe, certain people might feel that their needs are not being represented or not represented enough, but we work on behalf of the whole for the good of all and for the benefit of all. So I would like to use this opportunity to thank them for their service, because if it wasn't for them, the job that the Attorney General and I have of oversight for the task force would have been a lot more difficult. And as I'm saying this, I can't do it without singling out Mr. Abdiel Samuel for his leadership, unassuming leadership, thoughtful leadership, and selfless leadership of the task force at this time. So I just want to thank all of them for that. I join Minister Richards in extending condolences to the family of the late Elvira Williams, my former neighbor in Sandy Point, who has been a community matriarch on so many different levels. So many of her children active in the life of St. Kitts and Nevis in various capacities. Some have gone abroad, etc. I know it is going to be a big loss for them, but they have had a life with their mother where she was always honored by them. And I think that is what they will come together to celebrate, because her life was not an easy one. It was one of hardship, but nevertheless, her work and her investment in her children has been demonstrated by the type of lives that they live and the contributions that they make to St. Kitts and Nevis. And the final thing, or penultimate thing I would wish to indicate is to join with Senator Nisbet, not just in wishing sending advanced greetings to the Honorable Prime Minister, who was born on the Feast of St. Nicholas, but also to say advanced birthday greetings to the Honorable Sean Richards, who was born on the Feast of the Immaculate Conception, December 6th and December 8th. As a Roman Catholic, these feasts mean a lot to me. So I just wanted to, the 6th and the 8th of December. Right, so I just wanted to congratulate them in advance on their birthdays. And the final thing I would want to add on a more sober note is that as we navigate our way out of the COVID-19 pandemic, sometimes the other global challenges with which we are confronted would often get overshadowed. And one of them happens to be the ongoing global crisis as it relates to HIV and AIDS. Today is celebrated as World AIDS Day, and in as much as we have been preoccupied with COVID, we still have that global challenge that is facing us, where St. Kitts and Nevis, like the rest of the region, happens to have an unenviable record in terms of being part of the Caribbean, of having the second highest rate of infection after sub-Saharan Africa when it comes to HIV/AIDS. And while we recognize that there have been numerous advances in terms of treatments, etc., we are still finding that too many of our people, especially our young people, take for granted their sexual health and their own personal protections, which have deleterious impacts on their health, just in the way NCDs would do. So I would want us to spend some time to focus on that. Our citizens who we have lost over time, I think if I recall the data, we would have had more than 50 of our nationals die from HIV/AIDS within perhaps maybe the last 5 to 10 years. The overall figure is much more than that, it's over 100. But nevertheless, we have made great strides. As I'm saying this, and as persons have said their congratulations to the Honorable Dr. Denzel Douglas, the member for Constituency 6, I also wish to use the opportunity to thank him for his service to country when it comes to championing the cause of HIV and AIDS as well, and also NCDs during his tenure as Prime Minister, because it is a record that cannot be taken away from him, as he would have led COSAD during the time, much of the time, that he would have been Prime Minister of St. Kitts and Nevis. So I just want us to bear in mind those persons who are still struggling with HIV/AIDS, add to that the COVID-19 pandemic, and add to that our continuing crisis when it comes to NCDs, to remind us that while we may have made strides in terms of our economic development and our political development, there's still a lot of catching up to do in terms of the social side, especially that side that is impacted by health. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Honourable Member for Nevis 11, Alexis.
Mr. Speaker, thank you for the opportunity to speak on the adjournment, and I chose to come last. There is a reason why. I actually sat and listened to the history and the commendations that have been poured upon the member for St. Christopher 7, the Honourable Dr. Timothy Harris, and the congratulations that have been bestowed upon him for achieving 28 years as an elected parliamentarian. He says to me that he was elected somewhere around 1993. At that time, I was a young man, about 24 years old. So he has been around for quite some time. 28 years is what, I believe that's shy of 3 decades. A score on 28. or even a generation. So however you want to put it, it is a very long time for the people of St. Christopher 7 to repose their confidence in him, and I want to congratulate him. I have not worked with him for a long time. It's just over a year and a half. But of course, as a member of the cabinet of the federal government, I've had a chance to interact with him and see him at work. And I will say to the member of St. Christopher 6, there was some exchanges there. You hired, you fired, yes, but I'm sure the member for St. Christopher 7 can say he would have learned a few things from you. And you can say you would have imparted some good things as well. I won't go any further than that, because that's what it's all about. But the history behind the member from St. Christopher 7 is worth listening to and worth acknowledging. And of course, all of the folks who would have spoken before me have certainly imparted some really important things here in this honorable house this afternoon. I myself have been in elective politics for about 10 years, thereabout. Seems like a long time. But when you are committed to the good work out there to serve your people, time will fly quickly. But of course, over that period of time, you would have done some good things that keeps you energized and keep you pressing on to do even more and to do more for your country. And that is what I want to say to the Prime Minister, member for Nevis, not Nevis, St. Christopher 7. And I myself would want to press on as well, because I still have some time left at this particular profession, if I were to put it that way. And I've been here for a year and a half, and if I can spend another 10 years here, another 28 years, once God grant me the strength and the will to do so, I will do that, because it's always good to afford yourself to serve your people and to do the good that you are asked to do on their behalf. Mr. Speaker, while I'm on my feet, I want to, at this point in time, congratulate all of the recipients of awards last Thursday. This is the second year that I'm missing that award and that special sitting. That is the 25 Remarkable Teens Award, yes. And I apologize for that, because I was fortunate to be born on the 25th of November. And unfortunately, not in a bad way, the date has been set for that particular award ceremony or sitting, which is the 25th of November. And I made a commitment when I turned 50 that every 25th of November, I'm going to dedicate that day to myself. So I believe on that day, I spend more time pampering myself and making sure that I re-energize myself to face another year. So I want to apologize to the young people, because it is a day that I have secured for myself, and I will want to do that moving forward. But while I am on my feet, let me congratulate all of them who would have received awards last week, and to say to them that this nation is looking towards them for their future influence on the development of this, oh blessed federation. There's a reason why those persons were identified, because they have done things over their short life that would have impacted not only their communities, the various communities that is, but also the entire Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis. I would not have gotten an award back then, but it didn't stop me from aspiring to do good for and on behalf of the people of this country. And I'm sure with that award, it should be an added incentive for them to do even more. And where I stand here today, hopefully someday one of them or many of them would stand either here or behind any of these tables and make a delivery from this honorable house. They may not aspire to get over there, but they may have to come through there to get to here. But whatever it takes, I want them to go out and do their best to serve the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis. Mr. President, I say Mr. President again. That's when you have a conflict of two. You're in two. If you were in my position, you might have been saying that, member for the St. Christopher A. But Mr. Speaker, sorry, I want to wrap up by saying that we have some unfinished business in this House in the next 2 weeks. Yes. I'm looking forward to that, to lay my report card on the table and to report to the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis the wonderful things that we have been doing in agriculture, in fisheries, and all of the ministries that have been entrusted to me by the member for Nevis for St. Christopher 7, who is the chairman of cabinet and the one who assigns portfolios. But I will wait until that time, and I eagerly look forward to that. And I want to wrap up by saying, Mr. Speaker, that the year and a half that I've spent here thus far have been fruitful for me. And of course, I've had a chance to learn as I go, interact with all of the different members who are on this side and in cabinet, and certainly with our collective efforts, we have brought about some significant changes and differences in the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis, which would have made us a much better state, and we want to continue to press on in that regard. With those few words, Mr. Speaker, I thank you for your indulgence, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member for number 11. You did say you're the last, but I think you slipped up in not recognizing that the Honourable Member for number 7, the boy, I guess, would be coming up now. Yes, you did say you were going to be last.
No, when you gave me something that I didn't understand.
Honourable Member for number 7, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I rise not to tarry long. It has been a long day, and for me it has been a long month and a very hectic week last. I want to say thanks to all of my colleagues for the expressions of goodwill and support, and in recognition of my 28 years of service to the people of St. Kitts and Nevis as a member of the Parliament. It has been a long journey, and I've learned much. I want to give God thanks for through it all He has stood with me and guided me. I want to thank the people of St. Kitts and Nevis, because ultimately the politics is about the people, and the people of St. Kitts and Nevis have stood grounded with me throughout my 28 years of service. It is with a special delight that I must commend my people from St. Christopher 7 in particular, who have been loyal and steadfast and overwhelming in their support to me as your parliamentary representative. Allow me to thank the good people of Bellevue, the good people in my hometown of Tabernacle, the good people of Mansions, the good people of Christchurch, the good people of Phillips Village, the good people of Molyneux, the good people of Lodge Village, the good people of Lodge Project, the good people of Borea, and the good people of Atlas, all 10 communities, for outstanding support and service. It has been a journey through which they have carried me in good times and bad. I started my career as a member of the opposition benches way back in 1993, and oh, how good the people were to me, because in fact the leader of the opposition recalled that he recruited me. Indeed, it perhaps may be more apt to say that the people recruited me, presented me to him as the best choice, and he, in his wisdom, accepted that. Truth be told, I came somewhat reluctantly into the politics. Growing up, I simply wanted to be a teacher, to give back to my community, Perhaps because I had been fortunate to have had so many loving and remarkable teachers, from Miss One in Tabernacle throughout my primary school. Teachers like Miss Esdale, I always remark how her eyes impacted on me. And my hometown teachers, Susanna Lee, Teacher Vanta, and all others. The McCalls, I could remember them now, would have impacted my primary school. And at secondary school, still a remarkable group of teachers. And then in sixth form at the Barnsley High School, again, a remarkable experience, mixing and engaging with a wide cross-section of persons, including you yourself, Honorable Speaker, who was my contemporary then. In fact, I recall that there were 2 students from Nevis who at the time were with us in sixth form. And the other day I asked the speaker to recall the name of the young lady. And he took a little while, and I had to remind him of the second student that had graced our classrooms in sixth form. So it has been an interesting pathway that brought me into politics. And if I were to look back in a conscious way, I would say politics was always around me, but I didn't know. Every Saturday, my father would have us come to his house on the main street in Tabernacle to read sections of the Labour Spokesman. And it was his way of determining how we were progressing in school. It was from my father's house that all political activity on behalf of the Labour Party and the trades and labour union were being conducted. I was just a young man seeing things happening, seeing my father going through lists, not understanding until much later when I had to do the same exercise what my father was doing. In the latter years, as my father, Godfrey Nesbitt of Cotton Grove, Nevis, undertook, well, in his latter years, as he began to lose some of his vitality, it was I who he would have taken to help him as he performed duties as the shop steward for the trades and labour union. And it stuck with me from all the meetings we will have. The consistency of the word grievance. You have to record the grievance of the workers. So we have to take them to the union conference. In those days was in October. And I like to do that, take notes, provide them to him, and to go to the union conference, because it was always a celebration, argument about the provision of things, the protection of the workers, and those steep into my consciousness, and I think impacted my passion for social justice and my passion to work and to be with people, because in the family DNA, it was what my father did every week on the estate, where he would have driven what we'll call the gravel line way back then. And those things, I believe, led me there, from a young guy just wanting to teach because teachers were lovely people, and then wanted latterly to become a lawyer, and then shifted from that because at the time I went to register, the period had closed. I said, let me do something else. And I engaged in social sciences, and the rest of it was a career largely in accounting that took me all the way to Montreal, Canada, with the help of the Government of Canada, Trucida, to pursue a career leading to a tenured professor at the University of the West Indies. Indeed, I was fortunate then, based on my performance in a master's degree program in St. Augustine, to have been the first recipient of the Trinidad and Tobago Postgraduate Award and the first non-member of the teaching staff to have been accorded the program to pursue my PhD. And when Errolins came to speak to me about taking that journey, he said, "You have done incredibly well. You have been the best performer in our management program for years. We are going to Senate to have them give you special designation on your degree." And when that had been accomplished, well, Professor Watson, I could see him now, was dean. He then came and he said, "We are looking for somebody like you, a young man who could go on to serve the university for several years in a long-term way as a professor, and we are prepared to provide you a scholarship." And I said yes, because I really had enjoyed dabbling with teaching even back home in a private way. So from there, in '93, the leader of the opposition did call me back home to participate in the general elections. And I came hesitantly, really, because my career path had shifted. Although I had grown up in the political system, I had seen a different opportunity. And I remember one of my very good friends, Julie Murray of St. Peter's, said, "Timothy, don't go. Don't get yourself involved in the politics. You're already up here. You're studying. Just focus on that." I spoke with St. John Payne, who was former parliamentarian, and he said to me, "I think you should go home and tell the leader." And the rest basically was history. I did come home to say I won't participate. I was met at the airport by him and a large crowd of supporters from Number 7, including Joan Mitchum, who is here and who is perhaps always here. And I want to say thank you to them, because they impacted my judgment. And based on conversations with the leader, I determined that I would do this for him, for the party. And then I would go back to Canada to follow through on the pathway that had been determined, that I had determined was where I wanted to go. Perhaps the divinity that shapes the destiny stepped in, because that was '93. '93 we ended in an inconclusive election, one may say 4-4 and St. Kitts, and we had the Douglas arithmetic in place. And so as a result of that really, I stayed on for a longer period of time. And in the process, I had almost compromised my own program with the university. But I went back, and because I was, if I may say so, an excellent student, I went to my professors and I said, "Give me the exam. Give me 2 weeks. I will do them and I will pass them." And each of them granted it. Of course, they never understand the intricacies of our politics, how I, with a career path as a professor, basically in front of me, would have chosen to interrupt my studies and go home and participate in the elections. But again, I did it out of a commitment, really, to the party, to the movement, and the long history of my father's own involvement. And I did it too, because the party leader then understood that I was doing it for the party and that I would go back to complete the task. 95 came. During that period, I was basically starting the program at the St. Augustine campus, teaching during the summer program, lecturing in cost accounting and financial management. I remember one of my very first students was Scott Kane's wife, Mrs. Keynes, who had come over from Barbados to do the summer program. And she and at least two others from St. Kitts, I helped, tutored, and take through the program in terms of that. And that was a very fulfilling experience. I had determined then, instead of going to Trinidad and then come to St. Kitts after and then go back to Canada, for that year I was going to change it up a bit. And I was going to come to St. Kitts, then go to lecture and tutor at St. Augustine, and then back up to Canada. And in '95 I came home, and true to form, the elections were called in July. It was in the heart of the summer months. And again, I was almost, drawn into the frenzy of the moment. Well, I would say 93, 95 again, the people stood by me. We had a good machinery. I want to thank all of them, Miss Andrew posthumously, and all the other people who were galvanized then. Joan was there, William Phillip was there, and a host of others. To God be the glory, they are all still here. Those who are alive giving that tremendous support. And basically, from there, we went on and we went on. Good times and bad times. I've been able to see the government in all of the dimensions. I've had the opportunity that perhaps few persons have had in terms of the breadth of my service in the public domain, across ministries, agricultural, lands, housing, education, foreign affairs, international trade, finance, etc. Perhaps the only thing that had been not available was that of Prime Minister. So I had solved the full gamut, really. In the end, 2013 came, man determined to fire, but the people ultimately are who would do the hiring. And so that history taught me many things about governance, about the politics. And I want to thank all, particularly my constituents, thank the former Prime Minister for the opportunity I had to serve, to learn, and to defeat him eventually, because that is part of the learning. So to that extent, I would say that he was a good teacher. And so I look forward, really, with the grace of God, to serve the people of St. Kitts and Nevis. I mean, across, and my history teacher spoke about that, the political divide of the parties, we have been able to come together as a team, achieve some incredible feats on behalf of the country. I want to thank all of the cabinet ministers who have served in our first term and in our second term. I want to thank our senators. We have the Attorney General and Wendell Phipps, Senator Phipps, as second term, and we have first term coming in, Dr. Bernicia Nisbet. Incredibly, we were able to again create a historic feat in having our deputy, then Mrs. Akila Byron Nisbet, doing an incredible job in bringing home St. Christopher III into the fold of Team Unity. And I want to thank her. It was a task many said couldn't happen. I know it could have happened. We did the work, we coordinated well, and to God we give the glory. I again say thank you to everyone across the political divide who gave me support, outstanding support. as leader of Team Unity over the years. I want to thank the Deputy Prime Minister, I want to thank the Premier, and I must thank Vance Henry, who was the first Premier serving in our team, for all the support that has been provided. Ultimately, it has never been about me, because I am just a ordinary young fellow from Tabernacle, had no wish to carry the political leadership, simply want to give back by teaching. And I think my last 20 years have given me enough experiences, enough knowledge, enough wisdom to be able to do some teaching about the politics. For those who over the last month journeyed with me to the constituency, where we again reconnected and grounded with the people who have been such a joy to serve with all the ups and downs of the politics, the vicissitudes of life. One constant in my life have been the absolute, unconditional support of the people of Number 7 and the unconditional support of my family. So I want to thank all of them and all of the people who continue to pray. I would say without the prayers of so many people here in St. Kitts and overseas and elsewhere, I would not have made it through this incredible journey. But I am humbled, and I will continue to give service with humility. I will continue to seek for justice on behalf of the people of St. Kitts and Nevis. And where there is an injustice, I promise to fight to correct that injustice. It has been what growing up at my father's footsteps taught me. Grievance, that the grievance of the workers must be answered. So again, thanks for all the fine words of commendation spoken in a chapter that is now 28 chapters. And I say thank you, God, for being so merciful. Thank you, God, for giving me favor. And to the people of St. Kitts and Nevis, it has been an honor and privilege to have served you. May God continue to bless us all and protect us. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, the Honourable Prime Minister and Member for St. Christopher 7. Before I move the motion for the adjournment, I too would like to join all members in congratulating all those who are celebrating milestones, and in particular, I congratulate the Honourable Member for St. Christopher 7, Dr. Harris, on his milestone of achieving 28 years as an elected representative of the people. In doing so, I must chastise the Honourable Member for number 8, Honourable Hamilton, where when he was congratulating the Prime Minister, he did indicate that I was present at the luncheon on special invitation from the Prime Minister. Yes, I was, but in saying that, you gave the impression that I came all the way from Nevis just to eat and wine and dine. So I just want to place on record that I did, in fact, on special invitation, came across over the shark-infested waters. I first went to church, sir. Then I went and joined the Honourable Member who's celebrating for lunch. So I hope that sets the record straight. No, it's more important to know that I first went to church, sir. Sir, that's the point I really wanted to make. Congratulations again, Honourable Prime Minister, on your 20th anniversary. Honourable members, on that note, the question is that this Honourable House stands adjourned. Sign it aye. Those in favour? Those against? The ayes have it. This Honourable House stands adjourned. Sign it aye.
Should all acquaintance be forgot and evening.